I can't say names, but it was a private briefing with the cabinet. And what I told the group was that you have to understand that China is not Kansas. There's institutions different, there's politics that's different, and so forth. But I really think that it's possible for a trade deal to get done right now. Both sides need it. And the Chinese economy in particular is very weak. And they have a credit crisis underway that's really causing damage to the private firms. So if you're going to get something done, this is the right time to do it. I think very high probability March 1st deadline goes away, and that what we're likely to see is a package that includes easy things like buy a bunch of more soybeans, harder things like let's fix IP, but the Chinese want to fix IP too. What we're not going to see is give up industrial policy, abandon the SOEs, and so forth. You know, they're having a constructive discussion, I think, about ZTE, Huawei, telecom, 5G, and all that. All those are interesting areas to talk about, probably more time than we've got today.
John, you mentioned it was a wide range of Trump administration officials, maybe not naming them, and that you wouldn't mention specifically what they told you. But can I ask this? Were they united in their individual views as what they saw as the best way forward? Or does that not matter anymore, given what we just learned from Eamon, that it sounds like this is now between the two presidents to get over the line?
You know, I think that it is up to the teams to do this, and that the presidents will meet in March for a photo op, not for a deal. One of the impressions I walked away with is the U.S. team is very, very cohesive, gets along well, has similar views on many of these topics. I didn't get any friction ideas. Of course, my old friend, the only person in the White House who would probably not agree with me is my old friend Peter Navarro, who doesn't like these things. We had a long conversation about the Chinese currency, and it's very obvious to me that China has been propping up the currency, not pushing it down, and that efforts to try and get them to stabilize the currency actually help them, not hurt them. So they may say something about that too.
Mark, I want to get your thoughts on this, because say we do actually get some sort of initial deal here, or at least that deadline pushes back as we get closer to in these deal talks. What happens to the actual 10% tariffs that are currently in place? Also, you've got those metal tariffs. And when you start talking about something like an enforcement mechanism, how, I guess, plausible is it to think that the threat of tariffs could come back at any time?
Well, as long as Peter Navarro is in the White House, I think that it's quite plausible. I do think that we've seen, and I'm not an economist, I'm a foreign policy analyst, but we've seen the markets respond quite ambivalently. And I don't think that's surprising when you see the inconsistencies of the White House, the sort of walking back this March 1st deadline. But I just recently did a study, and the sort of tracking Americans' foreign policy views and how different that is from people in positions of power. And one thing that I was shocked to see is that global economic integration, free trade, were seen as drivers of peace, as prerequisites for peace and stability among a broad bipartisan group, including Democrats. So I think actually shifting a little bit to looking at the political liabilities for this president if he does not reach a deal, if tariffs do come back, they're pretty significant, as that's going to be a line for the 2020 Dems.
So, Mark, I mean, clearly a few months ago it didn't look like a deal was possible, and now it does look like it's likely. And while it takes two to tango, which of the two sides have softened their position more to get us to where we are now?
I think there needs to be neither, if I may say so. I mean, there is a way in which Xi Jinping is very focused on the sort of Chinese system of government, and we have Donald Trump not looking to cede much in the way of doing business American style, right? We're not going to give too much away on the IP front, for example. So there's a sort of a lack of empathy or a lack of realism on what the other side's position is. Frankly, the China-U.S. relationship isn't that of strategic competitors, as the White House would like to have us think. It's one of economic and diplomatic competitors. And I think that as long as the Trump administration kind of rattles its saber around the sort of strategic competitor narrative, it's not going to incentivize or entice China to soften its positions by any stretch.